Good afternoon, everyone. It is March the 30th, 2023. Today I'm going to go back in time a little bit and then come forward in time. I wish to explain how we had some of the problems from 1994 when I was very much part of dealing with the situation. What I'm going to read you right now, I'm going to start with this, is a letter that I wrote to the police commission while on the security committee of Hittenburg Community Center at the time, and our problems with the prostitution and the needles at this time in history. So I am going to read this first, and then I'm going to explain things. It is, and this was dated from me, October the 25th, 1996. And this is what I also hand out to the politicians, to remind them where we were and where we're at now. And it's to the police commission. My name is Christine. I am a housewife and mother of 5 children. Just before my second child was born, I gave up my job as a security guard. I personally believe that I should stay at home and raise my children in the safest and most loving environment that I could provide at home. The world outside was becoming a world of great uncertainty with more and more violence and fear of the unknown. Not at all a world that I grew up in. My story is about not falling victim to circumstances beyond my control and grouping with others who believed as strongly as I do in our community efforts to put things right. This has made our community stand out in a positive and most respected manner, not only to the politicians, courts, police force, and other authorities. In 1994, I was at a Hittenburg Park with my children. My youngest one was 1.5 years old. My next oldest was 4 years old. She had been playing in the sandbox while I was sitting on the bench giving the baby a bottle. My 4-year-old came up to me and asked me to blow up the balloon. I turned to see her handling me a recently used condom. Can you imagine my horror? My story is not unique. Upon telling my story to another mother, her story was as follows. Her 6-year-old and 4-year-old were playing with when the 6-year-old picked up a dirty syringe. She was just in time to see him going to stick his 4-year-old sister with it when she leaped between them, plucking the syringe out of his tiny hands, I should say. When she asked him what he was doing, his simple response was, "I was just playing doctor." As parents, we do go out and buy our children harmless plastic medical kits. We must be aware that simple pleasures of our childhood may be dangerous today. Upon walking down one block of a street in Hittenburg and seeing 5 condoms and 2 syringes proved too much for me. I heard about the meeting at Hittenburg Community Center in the fall of 1994. I went and I signed up for the newly formed security committee, and the rest is history. Here I am today, standing shoulder to shoulder with others on the committee who not only believe strongly in what we do, but have proven ourselves beyond a shadow of a doubt. Now, like in the story of Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, the police commission is about to sweep all our efforts and achievements under the carpet like a pile of dust, not to mention the dollars that have already been spent and the men and women power of our community police officers who have gone out there undercover, putting themselves in danger to protect us, especially the female officers who lure in the Johns with the 2 unsolved prostitute murders. They themselves could be confronted by the killer or killers, or even some John who was so spaced out on drugs with a syringe in hand. This person may not care because he himself has AIDS. She could be infected before her backup partners can reach her. I went door to door with the petition. The response was overwhelming. Almost everyone I could reach at home signed the petition. If I could walk door to door in the whole of Ottawa, Nepean, Gloucester, Vanier, Canada, etc., I am sure that the response would be the same. I have people on the petition who have signed from other areas and townships outside of Ottawa, including a woman visiting from Toronto. This petition has taken on a life of its own. It not only has shown a solid commitment by committees surrounding Hittenburg and Dalhousie concerning the prostitution issue, it is a solid commitment by the community and heartfelt thank you to the men and women in blue for their extraordinary efforts in doing their utmost to protect the community, and especially the very young children who are most vulnerable to the effects of this most negative social behavior affecting our streets. We may be able to vaccinate our children from some diseases, but our police officers are the only vaccine we have on the front lines protecting our children from this plague. Members of the board, I appeal to your sense of humanity. How would you react if your child or grandchild was stuck by a dirty syringe in the park? How would you handle the months of waiting to find out if the child has AIDS? The police sweeps have today cleaned up the streets. Today I can walk down the same street of 5 condoms and 2 dirty syringes and find none. My 2 boys of 13 and 15 years of age can walk freely down to Giant Tiger and no longer be propositioned by the prostitutes. The petition has been signed by many homeowners who pay taxes, and some pay higher than others. With all the problems plaguing this country, such as high unemployment, poverty, racism, the unity debate, etc., it is such a wonderful feeling to go door to door and realize that for all our differences, we can still agree on one thing. Our children, no matter what the cost, our children's protection is simply non-negotiable. We can replace our cars, our TVs when they get stolen, but the Police Services Board, to put a price tag on our children's heads is simply not acceptable. For without the precious resource of our children, this country, and in fact no country, has a past, present, or future. Has the dollar replaced the value of our children? Have all the politicians, etc., been blinded by the material value of the dollar? In the last few years, it seems that with cuts to education, etc., our children are no longer a precious gift on loan from the Creator, but the property of the bureaucrats to do as they please with. We as taxpayers, by signing the petition, have given the mandate to the police board to continue the sweeps. The petition gives the green light to our officers to continue to do their jobs as their oath states, to serve and protect. Please continue to protect our children in these hard times. We are simply saying again, the protection of our children is simply non-negotiable. And signed by me, Christine, concerned mother and Canadian citizen. This is where we were in the 90s, and it just keeps getting worse. And I had joined the security committee for a particular reason that day, and because of my security experience that I've had, and plus working with the police and having been married to a police officer myself, I felt that I would be of great value and with whatever I could say and put in an output. And so this is what's happening. Was happening back then. It's still happening, but at an accelerated pace. Today we really have an opioid crisis on our hands. So during the 1990s, we had more teenagers getting into drug dealing and stuff, and we had more little what do you call them? They're groups that were getting together, and like the Bloods and the Crips and stuff. And I have a lot of information on the background about them trying to get into the drug trafficking. Now today, and even back then they had guns, but we didn't see so many of them. But now we're seeing the guns coming out, and they're just popping each other off as quickly as they can, and that's what seems to be happening here. So, but with the children and that, what I would like to say is that I want to express that what's been happening here, like I said, I had been in with the Hindenburg Security Committee, working with all the politicians, everyone involved behind the scenes at the time as well, in the 1990s. This particular letter, when we were working with it was both Hindenburg as well as Dalhousie, when both our counselors got together, and we worked with both our security committees in on the situation with the prostitution and the drug dealing and the syringes. As a matter of fact, today it's our needle hunters that we set up that committee. We also set up the John School, as well as helping the police set up the John sweeps. That were a great deal of help back then. And I can tell you, even when you see our needle hunters pick up the syringes, they pick them up with the salad tongs. Well, that came from the principal at the time of Cambridge School, because at that time there were so many needles in the yard, they had to get the children to pick them up because they didn't have enough. So that's where the principal took the petty cash and started buying salad tongs. So that's the history behind the salad tongs for picking up the needles on the streets. But today it's got completely out of hand. There's so much I can tell you. This letter in particular, one of the why I really recommend the community officers is one of the community officers that I knew at the time was former Deputy Police Sue Sullivan. She was the constable. She was our community officer, or Dalhousie community officer, I should say, at the time. And I gave her this letter, and of course she just faxed it out everywhere at that time, and thankful and praising everyone for what they've been doing. But I also want to tell you that what's happening today, and I'm going to go back to during the pandemic, we had our lockdowns, but we also had in between lockdowns, we were out. And I want to tell you about a couple of incidents that happened. One of them was shocking enough. It was it was on August the 31st, 2021. It was about 7:30 in the evening. I had taken my service dog down to the dog park to let her run. There was another little pup there, a little husky pup, about 6 months old. She was probably about a year younger than my dog at the time. And the two of them were playing. Well, Scarlett, who was a 13-year-old red Doberman mix, came along, and she sniffed the pups. She was perfectly fine when she came up. Her owner let her off the leash. She went over to a thing that I don't know what it is. It's some kind of cement thing that the city apparently owns. It's in the dog park area, because the children's playground is on one side of the fence and the dog park's on the other side of the fence. So they were she was playing there with the pups, perfectly fine. And then the pups took off in one direction and she took off back to her master. Now, there was 4 of us in the park. There was the owner of the little husky pup, plus his friend, plus myself, plus the owner of Scarlett. Now, what happened was so shocking was that she just gone back to her master. The friend of the person who owned the little husky pup, we turned our backs on the two of them who started talking, watching the pups, and then we heard this horrible yell behind us. We turned around to see that the two of them were on the ground trying to give the dog CPR. Well, it was an awful night. We ended up calling 911. They gave us the number of a vet, at least, but that didn't help. They tried for 14 minutes to revive her, and they couldn't. Then we stayed in the park watching over her body while he had to go back home and get a vehicle. And then 2 of them had to carry the poor dog, the body of the dog back into the vehicle. And then he had to take it off wherever he had to take it off. But where these dogs were playing and my pups, I think she ended up being the one that gave up her life that night, because on the cement thing that was where we were constantly seeing people coming in with needles and syringes in the parks. Now, I can't complain. The needle hunters are there all the time. They're doing the best they can to clear out the needles. So I have no complaints about the needle hunters whatsoever. But what did happen, and I believe she must have sniffed something or got into something that the 2 pups didn't get into, and that's what killed her. But she wasn't there in the park any more than maybe 8 minutes before she went down. And the way she went down was really, really horrible. And I'm so thankful there was nobody in the children's playground at the time to have to see this. So this is just one incident. Then I heard about another incident 2 weeks after this incident in the same park. And with the fence between the 2 parks, the children's playground and the playground for the dogs, there was a pup, apparently another dog, a younger dog, sniffed something through the fence, took off on the owner, right around the fence, into the children's playground, sniffed a plate, and passed out. Now, what was on that plate to make that dog just pass out? Fortunately, that dog survived. But if it was a plate in the playground, this was not even in the dog park area, this was in the children's playground. That could be very dangerous for children as well. So this is one reason why I'm certainly in the fight for our children. Now, another incident that I can tell you about that summer was down in the other park, city park, where the wading pool was for the children. This I heard from another poor grandmother who had turned around and said what had happened was that she had taken her grandson to the wading pool. Lifeguards were there. It was in the middle of the summer. And all of a sudden, this homeless person came along and started stripping down and then started washing the clothes in the wading pool like it was their own personal washing machine. So then they ended up having to call the police. But what has been happening, and I'm going to explain more about the pandemic later, but I wanted to bring up some of the things that have happened. And what I'm seeing is that these addicts seem to think that they own the streets. And this is because of what happened in the pandemic when they had the run of the streets when we were all in lockdown, literally. And I'm not, like I said, I don't blame the needle hunters. But it's getting to the point where we have to worry about our children's safety too, because as Sandy Hill was complaining in that meeting that I had, and where I spoke to the city, if you want to look back at my other tape, they were complaining about the needles and the pipes and everything all over the place. Well, even our needle hunters don't even pick up the pipes and the other paraphernalia. They're only supposed to pick up the needles. So this is what I wanted to say. I didn't want to do too long a video, but I wanted to give you a little bit of an update and a little bit of an idea what's been happening. But we've been in this fight, and I've been in basically seeing this fight and not in it all the time. But I know that I have background experience in what I'm talking about. But for our children's sake, I will not stop. And I will fight whoever I have to fight just to get done what needs to be done in a proper way to protect our children. Now, I hope other people think our children are just as valuable so that they could go to a park and not have to be worried. Now, my other suggestion is if we have to patrol the parks, the best way to do it would be have the police department have a canine unit on hand with a drug dog that could quickly go through a park in no time and make sure that there's nothing of danger in our parks for our children to get into. That would only be another Band-Aid solution, but I'm worried again about this year. Last year it wasn't too bad, but even as dog owners, when we were in the park, we were constantly watching to try and see what was going on. And the needle hunters again were in there, but I did see the police have to come in at least one incident where they were digging holes in the ground in the dog park section, and they were actually lighting up pipes and doing drugs, so they had to get stopped. And then there's the problem of who do we call? There's the problem of, okay, some people say, sometimes we're told, well, call bylaw, they'll do something. Or sometimes they're told to call a police. And then the police will come and say, well, call bylaw, it's their job. So I think it's important if we put the community center in the Byward Market that we straighten out where bylaw goes and where the police department goes, because it's rather confusing and everybody's getting frustrated on that front too. So this is where I'm going to leave it today, and everyone have a nice day, and I'll talk to you soon again. Okay, bye-bye and take care.